Welcome back to Mystery Minds, the channel where we dive into the darkest corners of true crime, uncovering stories that shock, intrigue, and leave us questioning the world around us. When 60-year-old Elen Gowan left work on a chilly February evening, she had no idea it would be her final shift. Caught in a dangerous love triangle, she unknowingly stepped into the car of someone who had no intention of letting her go. 13 days later, her lifeless body was found under a bridge. What unfolded in the investigation was a tangled web of lies, deception, and a shocking family secret that had been buried for decades. Elen Gowan was the kind of woman people noticed not because she sought attention, but because of her warm smile and kind nature. At 60 years old, she had spent much of her life working hard, raising her daughter, and trying to find happiness in a world that had often been unkind. She had recently moved into a friend's home after ending a turbulent relationship with Sam Brammer, a man whose temper was as unpredictable as his affections. Their on-again, off-again relationship had been a source of concern for those close to her, especially her daughter, who had warned her mother time and again that Sam was dangerous. Ellen worked long shifts at Sugar's Diner, a place where she was well-liked by customers and co-workers alike. She had been there for years, a familiar face behind the counter, always quick with a joke or a kind word. On February 13th, 2023, she finished her shift as usual. It was a cold evening, the kind that made people hurry to their cars, eager to escape the chill. Ellen, however, had a few stops to make before heading home. She told her daughter she would be getting a ride from a co-worker to pick up some of her belongings from Mike's house, where she had been staying. It seemed like an ordinary plan, the kind of errand she had run countless times before. But Ellen never made it home that night. Surveillance footage later showed her leaving an apartment complex with a briefcase in hand. She appeared calm, unaware that these would be the last recorded moments of her life. The footage raised questions: why was she there? And who had she been meeting? Her family expected her to return, but when she failed to show up for work the next day, alarm bells went off. It wasn't like her to miss a shift without calling. Her daughter, sensing something was terribly wrong, wasted no time reporting her missing. The investigation began immediately, with detectives retracing Elen's final steps. Her co-workers confirmed that she had planned to leave with a colleague, but that never happened. Instead, it was Sam Brammer who had picked her up. Why had she lied about that? Had she been trying to avoid worrying her daughter, or was there another reason she didn't want anyone to know she was with Sam? What happened after Sam picked her up remained a mystery. He claimed he had driven her straight to Mike's house, dropping her off as planned. But there were no witnesses, no proof that she had ever arrived. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The more investigators dug, the more inconsistencies surfaced. Sam's story wavered, shifting subtly each time he told it. And then there was the sect footage proof that he had never gone near Mike's house that night. Instead, he had driven aimlessly, circling different areas of town. What was he hiding? And more importantly, where was Ellen? With Ellen missing, investigators turned their attention to the two men most entangled in her life: Mike, the friend she had been staying with, and Sam, the ex-boyfriend she had seemingly trusted enough to accept a ride from on the night she disappeared. Both men had complicated relationships with her, and both had reasons to be scrutinized. Mike was the first to be questioned. He admitted that Ellen had been living with him but denied any romantic involvement. According to him, their relationship was purely platonic, though some people who knew them claimed otherwise. There were whispers that he had made advances toward her, that she had considered leaving because of it. But when asked directly, he insisted he had nothing to do with her disappearance. He claimed he had expected her that night, but she never arrived. Then there was Sam. From the start, something about his story felt off. He said he had dropped Ellen off at Mike's house just as she had planned. But when pressed for details, his version of events was inconsistent. Sometimes he claimed she had been in a hurry, eager to retrieve her things. Other times, he said she seemed reluctant to go inside. The details changed with each retelling, and when detectives reviewed surveillance footage, they found the first real crack in his alibi. Sam's vehicle was seen on multiple cameras around town the night Ellen vanished, but not once did he drive toward Mike's home. Instead, he took an erratic, seemingly aimless route, circling certain areas more than once. It was as if he was stalling, avoiding something, or perhaps looking for the right place to do something unthinkable. When confronted with this, Sam deflected. He couldn't explain the discrepancy. He got defensive, claiming he must have forgotten exactly where he had gone. He grew irritated, his answers growing shorter. His behavior outside the interrogation room was just as concerning. Friends and family reported that he had been acting strangely since Elen's disappearance. He was more paranoid than usual, avoiding phone calls, keeping his distance. Then came the reckless high-speed chase. When officers attempted to bring him in for further questioning, he led them on a dangerous pursuit before finally being apprehended. Instead of cooperating, he spiraled further, leading to a temporary stay at a psychiatric facility. But there wasn't enough to hold him, and within days he was back on the streets. Meanwhile, Elen's daughter pleaded for answers. She had known her mother's relationship with Sam was troubled, but now she wondered if it had been far worse than she had ever realized. Sam's son painted a different picture, one that tried to shift blame onto Elen. He described her as unstable, volatile, prone to dramatic outbursts, but detectives saw through the attempt to paint her as the problem. If Elen had been the one to fear, why was she the one missing? And why was Sam the one running from the law? As days passed with no sign of Elen, the pressure mounted. If she was still alive, time was running out. If she wasn't, they needed to find her before the truth disappeared along with her. 13 days after Elen Gowan was last seen, the search for her came to a devastating end. A group of hikers passing through a wooded area near an old bridge made a horrifying discovery: a partially concealed body, lying motionless beneath the structure. The moment authorities arrived on the scene, they knew this was no accident. The remains were quickly identified as Elen's, and what had once been a missing persons case now became a homicide investigation. The condition of Elen's body raised more questions than answers. There were visible injuries, but none appeared to be immediately fatal. Without a clear cause of death, forensic experts faced a difficult challenge. Had she been attacked and left for dead? Was she restrained or unconscious before being placed under the bridge? Or had she suffered at the hands of someone who knew exactly how to make it look like her death was inconclusive? The uncertainty only made the case more complicated. Investigators carefully combed through the crime scene, looking for any evidence that could point to her killer. The location itself was isolated, away from heavy traffic or frequent visitors. Whoever had left her there had chosen the spot deliberately, ensuring she wouldn't be found for days. But despite their efforts, there were no immediate signs of a struggle, no discarded belongings, and no obvious clues that directly linked anyone to the scene. The placement of her body suggested she had been moved after death, meaning this wasn't a crime of passion, it was calculated. The discovery reignited the investigation, shifting the focus back to Sam Brammer. His erratic behavior, inconsistent statements, and the fact that he had been the last known person to see Elen alive all made him the prime suspect. His earlier claim that he had dropped her off at Mike's house was already disproven, and now, with the body found, his lies became even more damning. When detectives approached Sam for further questioning, they were met with more resistance. He refused to cooperate, avoided direct answers, and seemed more focused on covering his tracks than proving his innocence. He denied any involvement, insisting he had no idea what had happened to Elen. But the evidence was stacking against him. As forensic experts continued their examination, a crucial discovery emerged: signs of strangulation. Though not initially obvious, deeper analysis of the tissue in her neck revealed telltale bruising, suggesting she had been manually strangled. This changed everything. What had initially been ruled as an undetermined cause of death was now being reconsidered as homicide. Investigators also revisited Sam's past and uncovered a disturbing pattern. He had a history of controlling behavior, especially in relationships. His ex-wife had once accused him of being violent, though no charges had ever been filed. Friends of Elen later admitted that she had confided in them about feeling unsafe around him but had downplayed her fears. She had wanted to believe he wasn't as dangerous as others suspected. As more pieces of the puzzle came together, it became clear Elen had been silenced, and Sam was at the center of it. The challenge now was proving it in court before he found a way to escape justice again. With forensic evidence pointing to strangulation, the investigation into Elen Gowan's death took a decisive turn. Sam Brammer had gone from a person of interest to the prime suspect, and detectives were determined to hold him accountable. But there was a major obstacle without direct evidence tying him to the crime scene. Prosecutors faced an uphill battle in proving he was responsible for her death. Sam was arrested, but not for murder. Instead, he was initially charged with abuse of a corpse, a lesser offense the prosecutors hoped would keep him in custody while they built a stronger case. It was a strategic move. While they lacked undeniable proof of homicide, they had enough to suggest that Sam had disposed of Ellen's body. The location where she was found, the inconsistencies in his statements, and his suspicious behavior all pointed in one direction. Despite his arrest, Sam continued to deny any involvement. He refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing and seemed confident that without direct evidence, the case against him would fall apart. His legal team argued that Ellen's cause of death remained uncertain, making it impossible to prove she had been murdered at all. They suggested that her injuries could have been caused by a fall or other accident, implying that Sam was being unfairly targeted based on circumstantial evidence. But investigators weren't done. Determined to uncover the truth, forensic experts re-examined Ellen's remains, focusing on the bruising around her neck. Their findings were conclusive, subtle but clear signs of manual strangulation, previously overlooked in initial examinations. This was the breakthrough prosecutors needed. Ellen had not died by accident. She had been killed. With this new evidence, the case against Sam became stronger. The abuse of a corpse charge was upgraded to second-degree murder, ensuring that he would face the full weight of the law. Prosecutors argued that Sam had lured Ellen into his car under false pretenses, knowing he had no intention of letting her go. They painted a picture of a man consumed by jealousy, unwilling to accept that Ellen had moved on. The evidence, though largely circumstantial, was damning. His false alibi, the surveillance footage that contradicted his claims, and his erratic behavior in the days following her disappearance all pointed to guilt. The trial was tense, drawing in those who had followed the case from the beginning. Ellen's family sat in the courtroom, listening as prosecutors detailed the final moments of her life. They described how she had trusted Sam, unaware of the danger she was in until it was too late. The defense fought back, insisting that there was no physical proof linking Sam to the act of strangulation. They argued that without DNA, fingerprints, or eyewitnesses, the case was built on speculation. But the jury saw through the defense's attempts to cast doubt. The weight of the evidence, the lies, and the inconsistencies were enough. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the verdict was announced guilty of second-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, and theft. The sentencing was swift. Sam Brammer was given 65 years behind bars, ensuring he would never walk free again. For Ellen's family, justice had been served, but the pain of her loss remained. The trial had answered some questions, but it had also raised new ones. Why had she gotten into Sam's car that night? Had she sensed the danger? Had she tried to fight back? These were questions that would never have answers, lingering shadows in a case that had already revealed so many dark truths. With Sam Brammer sentenced to 65 years in prison, the case was officially closed. Justice had been served, but the impact of Elen Gowan's murder didn't end in the courtroom. For those who had loved her, the verdict brought some relief, yet it could never undo the loss they had suffered. Her daughter, who had spent weeks searching for answers, now had them, but they were answers no one wanted to hear. The reality of Ellen's final moments haunted her, a painful reminder of how quickly life could be taken away. In the months that followed the trial, those closest to Ellen tried to piece their lives back together. Her co-workers at Sugar's Diner placed a small memorial at her old workstation, a framed photo and a candle burning in her memory. Customers who had once shared conversations with her over coffee now spoke of her absence, the friendly face that had once been a part of their daily lives gone forever. The community, shaken by the brutality of the crime, struggled to understand how someone they had known could meet such a tragic fate. For investigators, the case remained one of the most complex they had worked on, not because of a lack of suspects, but because of the challenges in proving what they already suspected. Sam had been careful, but not careful enough. His arrogance had been his downfall, his belief that without direct evidence, he could escape responsibility. In the end, his own lies had sealed his fate. Despite the conviction, some questions remained unanswered. The full extent of what happened the night Ellen was killed would never be known. Investigators had pieced together a timeline, but without Sam's confession, The finer details were left to speculation. Had he planned it in advance? Or had rage taken over in the heat of the moment? Had Ellen realized too late that she was in danger, or had she trusted him until the very last second? These were the kinds of questions that lingered, the kind that made it impossible for her family to ever truly move on. As time passed, the case became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how manipulation and control could escalate into something deadly. Domestic violence organizations cited Ellen's story as an example of the warning signs that often go unnoticed until it's too late. The cycle of abuse, the possessiveness, the emotional instability, all of it had been there. If only she had been able to escape sooner. If only someone had intervened before things reached the breaking point. Sam, now locked away, faded into the background. Just another inmate serving out his time. His name would never be remembered with sympathy. He had stolen a life and destroyed countless others in the process. And though he may have once believed he could outsmart the law, he had failed. Ellen's story, however, lived on, not as just another crime statistic, but as a painful reminder of the dangers that could lurk behind familiar faces. Her daughter made sure of that. She spoke about her mother's life, not just her death, ensuring that Ellen would be remembered not as a victim, but as a person, a woman who had loved, who had worked hard, and who had deserved so much more. Elen Gowan's tragic story is a haunting reminder of the dangers that can hide behind familiar faces. Though justice was served, the impact of her loss will never fade for those who knew and loved her. What do you think about this case? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mystery Minds for more deep dives into the most chilling true crime cases. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and stay safe.